The Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Jeff Brantley.
What's up, everybody? How you feeling today? It's Monday, episode 87 of the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeff Brantley. Glad to be back with you today on the episode to go over UFC 262. Had a great weekend. I was live at the fights at the Toyota Center. Had a blast. Going to go over some of that today. The experience of being back in an arena. The first time I had been back in any sporting event or any kind of crowd venue like that in over a year. So had a lot of fun at UFC 262, and of course, it was a phenomenal night of fights. A phenomenal night of fights, especially the main event of the evening. Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, crazy fight while it lasted. Going to give my thoughts on all of that in 1 second. Go through UFC 262 completely, and then at the end of episode 87 today, we will start to turn the page to another busy fight weekend coming up in which Cyborg's back in action, Bellator 259, also some LFA, also some Invicta, also UFC Vegas 27, some boxing too this weekend coming up, a big boxing fight for the super lightweight titles to unify the division. So very fun weekend coming up as well. We'll turn the page at the end of episode 87 today on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. Go to the website for the show. It's maninthecagemmma.show. You can get everything there, guys, an about page for why I'm the Man in the Cage, why this is the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. You also get the latest episodes there, plus a link to all the videos up on YouTube, and that'll be the next part of the details I go into here in just a second. Here is everything where you can watch, of course, the show. Many of you already know this, where you can watch and listen, but I'll share more details on that in a second. But the website, if you go there, you can get pretty much everything. Again, there's also some Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast swag up there, t-shirts, sweatshirts, socks. I was wearing a t-shirt, I believe, on episode 85. I'll break it out again here soon. Look to get some more merchandise out too for the show as well. But go there. You can get the merchandise. You can also pledge to become a supporter of the show if you love it. I love all my supporters out there. Helps me keep going on the podcast along with all my sponsors. So go there, hit the donate, support the show button, top right-hand corner of the screen up on maninthecagemmma.show. That's so you can support the show fully and some other cool things, as I said, up on maninthecagemmma.show. You can check out every episode right here on YouTube now. We're on YouTube every single episode. I record every single episode, put it up on YouTube. Also starting to do some live shows here and there. We did an Instagram live this past Friday, some weigh-in reaction. Going to start to do those on YouTube as well. So make sure you go to YouTube. And there's some cool EA Sports UFC 4 simulations we've also been breaking out here on the podcast to simulate some of these main events and co-main events. I put my commentary with them. They've been a lot of fun. So you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast YouTube channel. Go there, you get all of that. And if you're more into the old school, just audio version of things, that's me sometimes too, whether I'm, if I'm listening to a podcast in the shower or on the way to work or in the car, something like that. It's easier, the audio version. You can go to Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Go hit the subscribe button there too. Go hit the follow button there too. You can get the latest notifications whenever an audio version drops of the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports Podcast. All right, everybody, let's get into it today. 5-minute subjects coming up, mostly on UFC 262. Then I'll get to 3 parting shots, mostly again on UFC 262. But I do have a couple subjects at the end of my parting shots, including, again, turning the page to this weekend's fight calendar that we'll get to at the end of the show. But mostly UFC 262 today, and as it should be. I mean, what a phenomenal event. I don't see how anyone wouldn't have had fun watching that card. Well, unless you were the group of people in the stands at the Toyota Center, at least the two fights that I saw broke out in the stands. One went viral pretty good on the internet, on Twitter, on social media. So I guess if you were in one of those fights and you probably ended up in jail, probably not a good night for you at UFC 262. But everybody else, though, had a great time at UFC 262. And I actually have some thoughts on the crowd at the end of, I believe it's topic number 5 actually today, topic number 5 for me in my 5-minute topics reacting to that live crowd on Saturday night. But I don't see how you wouldn't have had fun with this card, and that's what we'll start here with topic number 1, one of the most fun subjects you could probably talk about from UFC 262, and that's that main event that we saw between Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler for the UFC vacant lightweight title. It was a phenomenal fight. It was phenomenal to watch in person. I'm throwing the 5 minutes up now, and just so you know, I'm probably going to go about 10 minutes actually on this main event. I'm going to go topic number 1 and 2 on the main event just because there's so much to cover here. But Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler, back and forth fight. We had predicted it all week. We had talked about it all week that both these guys were going to sit in a phone booth together, and they were going to exchange, and they were going to throw together. And there was going to be no backing down from either man. And that's exactly what we saw. And credit to both men, again, that they came out with that competitive spirit in this fight to stand in front of each other and just let it all hang on the line. And really what this fight came down to, and again, I talked about it last week, that it was going to be the smallest of inches, the smallest of differences between these two fighters that was going to determine who had their hand raised and who didn't. And that's pretty much what it came down to. And to be honest with you, summing it up now after seeing UFC 262 even more so, even more simplifying things, it really came down to who was going to seize the moment. That's just like life, right? Sometimes I try to bring some life lessons into, our combat sports topics here, but that's just like life. It's just like any other sport. Who's going to seize the day sometimes? Who's going to seize that moment? That was Charles Oliveira as he knocked out Michael Chandler, as most of you know already. Of course, if you don't, I don't know where you were, but if you didn't, of course, Charles Oliveira, he beats Michael Chandler by knockout, TKO, technically, in the second round of their championship fight. But Charles Oliveira seized the moment. He was the guy who seized the moment in the most final way that you can. Michael Chandler had some moments, and I'll get more deeper into Michael Chandler's side of things, deeper into the Charles Oliveira side of things in a second here, but it was just that who seized the moment, who had that final seizing of the moment, and it was Charles Oliveira. Chandler had some opportunities to seize it. He had some opportunities that I think he's going to really kick himself in the butt maybe for the rest of his life over, but he wasn't able to. It was Charles Oliveira who ultimately seized that moment. He clipped Chandler in that second round at the start of the second round, was able to put him away. Fantastic performance for Charles Oliveira as he is the new UFC lightweight champion. And we'll start right there, and then I'll move to the Michael Chandler side of things. But just the initial thoughts of Charles Oliveira winning the title, just knowing the journey that he's been on, and the excitement and the tears and the pure joy that he had when they put that belt around him, when Dana White put that strap around him on Saturday night at the Toyota Center in the center of the octagon. You just had to feel great for the guy. And you don't feel that many times in any sport, really, right? Unless you're a fan of, let's say you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, right? Or you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. I'm sure you felt a lot of joy watching your team win the Super Bowl as a fan. But as a fan, you don't see a lot of times an athlete having a performance like that and really just bring some motivation to you as well and just make you happy. I'm so happy for Charles Oliveira. I mean, it's amazing the journey he's been on. The 11 years in the octagon, 11 years fighting in the UFC. I believe I saw most fights in the UFC before winning a title ever. Out of any UFC champion ever, he's had the most fights in the UFC before winning the title. So Charles Oliveira, you just have to feel great about what he did and happy for him. And just the country of Brazil as well. I mean, just a huge moment for Brazil, huge moment for Charles Oliveira. What a journey this man's been on. I mean, the losses, the ups and the downs, as we've been talking about, the adjustments that he's made. That's going to go under the radar a lot too with all of what we've seen. You'll hear some talk about it, but not everybody, that Charles Oliveira, through these losses, through the years, has improved so much, and that's all you can ask for any fighter, and that's what he's done, and that's why he's able to win the title. Charles Oliveira, the product that we saw in the octagon this past Saturday night, was not the same Charles Oliveira we saw earlier in his career. He's always been great on the ground. He's always had great jiu-jitsu. But that striking has gotten better and better, and I think it's scary to actually see him keep improving, how slick he is, and that confidence of standing in front of guys now. And he said it at the end of his fight on Saturday night when Joe Rogan was interviewing him. And I'll get into more of the first round from Michael Chandler's perspective. But in that first round, Charles Oliveira was in a lot of trouble. He was hurt a little bit in that first round. He had his moments when he had taken Michael Chandler's back, and impressive for Chandler too to be able to get out of that, not get submitted. So Oliveira had some moments, but he also had the moment at the end of the round where he looked like maybe the show was going to end for him, that Michael Chandler was going to become the new lightweight champion in the UFC. Hit him with a nice combination, hit him with a nice left hand, I believe. Then Oliveira almost pretty much face planted, was trying to grab a takedown, if you will, just trying to grab a leg, went to the ground. Chandler started throwing some more ground and pound strikes there. Oliveira then let him come into his guard. Again, I'll get to the Chandler side of things again in a second, but it looked like Oliveira might just close the show out. It looked like look like Chandler might just close the show out. It looked like he might be the new UFC lightweight champion of the world. Oliveira was able to endure that, though, and able to ride that out and really come back and really have that moment just like the rest of his career, that really had him face adversity, battle back, and get that UFC title. So hats off again. Applause to Charles Oliveira. I admit it, I'm probably a bigger Michael Chandler fan than I am an Oliveira fan, but I also really like Oliveira. But you can't feel nothing but happiness for Charles Oliveira in that moment. And that was exactly the title fight. That's exactly the champion the UFC needed coming out of the Khabib era. Someone that puts it all on the line, and that when he defends his title next, is also going to put it all on the line against, we will see, and that'll be another topic as part of my first 1 and 2 topics here on the Man in the Cage MMA and Combat Sports podcast. So really happy for Charles Oliveira. The strike that really hurt Michael Chandler, we talked about it last week. I didn't give him credit, because I think Oliveira, I said it on my preview show, he's got some slick hands. He's got some improving hands, some improving, his shootbox style, the Muay Thai that he does have. It can be very slick when he puts it together right, and in certain moments, it looks very good. There's other moments, though, where he does eat shots, and we saw that in the first round with Chandler tagging him at the end of that round, almost finishing the fight. He's right in front of you. He's there to be hit. That is going to be Charles Oliveira. That's going to be some of the weaknesses that he does have. But the thing that I highlighted it. I said the one thing, Oliveira needs to try to get to the ground, which he did try to do in that first round against Michael Chandler. But then also he needs to use those hooks, and that's what closed the show out. He countered as Chandler was coming out of his combination. He countered him, hit him with that left hook. Perfect accuracy right on the chin. Perfect technique there, and that's one of Oliveira's best punches. Are those hooks, those check hooks, and in this case, a counter punch, a counter left hook, puts Chandler down, wins the fight. I just can't wait to see how Charles Oliveira keeps getting better as his career goes on. Can't be nothing but you have to feel so good for the guy. And I feel good sitting here on a Monday that we saw such a great performance, and for someone that really deserves it like Charles Oliveira. It's for someone that it really means that much to him. We see guys like Jorge Masvidal nowadays. Last point on Oliveira, then I'll move down the list here to Chandler a little bit. We see guys like Masvidal and others, not ripping anybody. Everyone's got their own motives. Everyone wants to get paid. But you see some of these fighters nowadays who are trying to fight for BMF belts, right? And belts that, the McGregor belt, all these other belts that guys are trying to make up. This is an actual MMA title, right? This is something that should really mean something to somebody, and it doesn't all the time, but it meant something to Charles Oliveira. So hats off once again to Charles Oliveira. All right, now as I'm almost done with my 10 minutes already, I told you it was a lot of this 10 minutes, maybe even more here, was going to be about this main event. There's just so much to unpack from this fight as I reacted to live. You probably saw me on Twitter, at Jeff_Brantley, right after the fight, reacting live to it. There's just so much about this fight, so we're probably going to go a little over. But the Michael Chandler side of things here, what could have been, I think that's probably going to be what's in Michael Chandler's head for at least the amount of time until his next fight, and if he never gets that UFC title. I give him credit. He went out there, he competed. You can never take that away from him. And again, I'm not taking anything away from Charles Oliveira. He seized the moment when it mattered most, when he had the chance to, and he was able to come back second round, get back to his feet, gain his wits a little bit about him again. He was able to close the show, seize the moment. So I'm not taking anything away from Charles Oliveira. But Michael Chandler could have most likely won that title in the first round had he not made so many crucial errors. He made so many fight IQ mistakes in that first round. I don't even know where to start. I mean, there's the back take from Oliveira in which he goes to slam him. Hindsight now, it didn't hurt him, but you hear Daniel Cormier talk a lot about when someone has your back like that, when someone takes your back, especially someone as dangerous as Charles Oliveira, jiu-jitsu-wise, you don't want to slam them. Sometimes when you slam them like that, it'll let them sink in quicker. It'll let them sink in better with their body triangle or hooks, or get that submission, that rear naked choke, which Oliveira was going for. That was a mistake from Chandler. Now, he was able to get to the ground, then use his athleticism, use his strength, explode, face and turn, and get into top control. But that's again where he made another mistake, where he is able to get out of that back take from Oliveira, which is crazy. I mean, how many people get out of a back take from Oliveira like that? Not many of them. He's able to do that. But then once he does that, he sits in his guard for a little bit, and he's able to get back to his feet. It doesn't let Oliveira get back up. Another crucial mistake there, where you have to let Charles Oliveira get back up. It should have been the first thing he's thinking of. Get back up. Get back up. Chandler had the advantage with pure power, okay? Now, I know he ended up getting knocked out himself, but pure power-wise, just, if you were to match the guys, Chandler has a small advantage there. And that he's not going to beat him in a grappling contest. He's just not. He's not going to beat him in a wrestling contest unless he plays with fire the whole fight and really plays it smart, doesn't get submitted. Maybe he wins by decision. That's best case, though. So Chandler needed to let him get back to his feet. Another crucial mistake there. Then, the biggest one of all is after they do get back to their feet, Chandler is able to close the distance, change the levels of his strikes, goes with a nice combination, hurts Charles Oliveira. Pretty good. Oliveira goes to the ground, as I said. He's almost face down on the mat. Chandler just goes to a right-handed technique with his ground and pound. He probably should have been a little more patient. I think he let the moment get to him a little bit again, got a little too hasty with it, wasn't able to really land a devastating big shot to end the show. Then Oliveira gives his back up, and then here it is, the one that'll just kill him and killed me live there for Chandler, is instead of having Oliveira, and this is at the end of the round, so there's not much time left, which is, maybe he wanted to take a little bit of rest, go to the second round, but instead of letting Oliveira get back to his feet, a guy who just got hurt a little bit, and then maybe hurting him again and putting him away, he goes down to the mat with him again. He gets back in his guard. He tries to go for some ground and pound. He definitely wins the round. Two judges had it 10-8 for Chandler, which is controversial, depending on who you talk to, but still, that no matter what, even again, he won the round 10-8, 10-9, doesn't matter. He shouldn't have went to the ground with him. He should have allowed Charles Oliveira to stand back up. He should have went back to work with those boxing combinations. Maybe he could have ended the show at the end of that first round. If not, had Oliveira in more trouble again, because Oliveira was able to regain his wits a little bit, then go back to his stool, then come back out, recharged, refocused after talking to his coaches. So I think that was a huge, crucial mistake for Michael Chandler there, and that's why it's going to be a little bit of a what-if scenario for him. But again, it's whoever seizes the moment. Chandler panicked a little bit here and there, didn't have the fight IQ. That's part of the game too, and that's why Charles Oliveira wins, because then he comes out, second round refocused, and is standing right in front of Michael Chandler, lets him throw, and then cracks him with that beautiful left hook. And last point on Michael Chandler here before I get to what's next for both of these men. Oh, and I have another quick point on Chandler too, and then I'll get to what's next for both of these men, and then I promise I'll get to my other topics here. They're all UFC 262 anyway, so it doesn't matter if we're going over here on my 5-minute topics. But last point for Chandler here. You saw at the start of the first round, being in the arena live especially, can really see it, that Oliveira came right out, shoot box down. I talked about it last week. He stands square right in front of you, shoot box Muay Thai style, hands up in his guard, right in front of you, almost a little too square at times. Not the point, though. He's right in front of you, right? Chandler needed to move his feet better. He needed to circle. He needed to throw combinations and circle. Throw combinations and circle. Or if the guy's right in front of you, you can't be looking like that. You can't be staring. And that's how he got caught with that left hook, too, that he was right in front of him. He threw a combination. He came back. He was right in front of him. Oliveira is a bigger lightweight than Michael Chandler. Chandler is a small lightweight. You can't be standing in front of your opponents like that, especially someone like Oliveira who does have some nasty stuff he can hit you with. Can't be doing that. Start of the first round, you saw it. Chandler looked a little, he's right in front of me, and he looked a little gun shy. Instead of just throwing, he stood there a little too long. He looked a little too long. Now, again, you don't want to get countered like he did, but you got to throw and move. You can't just stand there in front of somebody and expect to win the fight and not to get hit with something big eventually. And that was another crucial mistake Michael Chandler went. So overall, again, Charles Oliveira, really happy for the guy. He's the UFC lightweight champion now. Some big fights coming up ahead, and I'll get to those matchups in a second, who I want to see him matched up with, possibly for the title. But last Michael Chandler point, then I'll get to that. I've seen a lot on Twitter, and I saw this after the fight, a lot of people running laps, victory laps on Michael Chandler. And a lot of these guys, and again, I'm not naming names out there, and if you pick Charles Oliveira, that is fantastic. I did pick Michael Chandler, and he had some moments. And that's my exact point here, is some out there, and this isn't everybody, there's just some out there who, from MMA media and some other guys who, some picked Charles Oliveira, some didn't. Now, right after the fight, were like immediately like, "Oh, I told you so." I'll see you at the top. Making fun of Michael Chandler and saying, "Oh, go back to Bellator" and all these things. Just stop, people. It's ridiculous. The guy, some of these comments make him out to be a bum. He's not a bum, okay? He survived a back take from Charles Oliveira. He had him a little bit in a predicament in that first round. Probably, maybe, if he does things differently, definitely, I would say at least deserved a 10-8 round in round one. I'm not saying he did, but had he let Oliveira get back to his feet, maybe throw in some more combinations there, maybe hurt him some more, definitely a 10-8 round for Charles Oliveira there. So let's not make him out to be a bum. And then round two, did he make some mistakes again? Yes, he absolutely made some mistakes again. But that's the fight game. That's everybody. I don't, people were getting mad at people calling Jorge Masvidal a bum after he got knocked out by Kamaru Usman. I don't see as many people getting mad at people calling Michael Chandler a bum. And I get it. Not a lot of people out there, they don't like Michael Chandler, but still, I don't like, I want to get off the, running victory laps over Michael Chandler being a bum thing. I think it's the farthest thing from the truth. Is he UFC lightweight championship level? I'm going to say maybe. Okay, so I will give you all that, you Michael Chandler haters out there. Is he? I think he's borderline, okay? I mean, we saw that in the Oliveira fight here, the mistakes he made against others like Poirier, McGregor. We can name some others. I think it could be a similar story, but let's not make him out to be a bum either, okay? He's borderline caliber there to be a UFC champion, okay? But Michael Chandler's had a great career. I just didn't like that. That bothered me the other night. I'm like, let's get out of here with all this bum talk now about Michael Chandler, okay? And we'll see who he matches up with next, and that'll be my next part of this subject here before I get into topics number 2 and 3 going through the co-main event, and then also through the rest of that UFC 262 card, which was very good as well. But what's next for both these men real quick? Oliveira-wise, who's going to face him for the title? I think Dana White's talked about this a little bit, but you would think it has to be Conor McGregor or Dustin Poirier. Poirier should have been in this fight to begin with. Poirier, speaking of a guy who, again, maybe a new fighter, not a new fighter, but a fighter with a new mentality of not caring about the belt as much, he decided again to take this trilogy fight with Conor McGregor. Now, he's going to get paid a lot. It's a payday for him. This was probably the right time because Conor McGregor is going to face Nate Diaz at some point in their trilogy fight. This might be Poirier's best chance to do it. So I can understand why he did it over the belt, but he's taking this trilogy fight later in July over fighting for the belt. But if Poirier beats McGregor again, he absolutely, definitely deserves that title shot against Charles Oliveira. Same can be said, though, for McGregor, and this is where it gets sticky, and a lot of people out there aren't going to like this either, that, yeah, has Conor McGregor done a lot of winning in the UFC over the past 2 or 3 years here? Absolutely not. But if he beats Dustin Poirier, a guy who just beat him, if he comes back and does that, his resume speaks for itself. I think Conor McGregor then, especially money-wise, ratings-wise, should fight Charles Oliveira for the title. So whoever wins Poirier-McGregor, I think it's the #1 contender spot. I think it's whoever does that gets to face Oliveira for the belt next. And again, that fight's in July, so you could be talking later this year for Oliveira defending his belt. There's other matchups maybe the UFC could try. If they wanted to give Oliveira a fight sooner. But for my money, that's what I would do, as I would have Poirier fight McGregor as they are in July. Whoever wins that is going to face Charles Oliveira next, and what will be a tantalizing fight. It'll be very, very good. Now, for Michael Chandler, what's next for him? He's still going to be up there. I mean, he's still going to be close to a top 5 guy, if not a top 5 guy still, especially as I'll get into a second. Tony Ferguson losing to Beneil Dariush in the co-main event. Ferguson's got to drop out of the top 5 here. Dariush getting closer to that top 5 now, which we'll get to that. But Ferguson's going to drop out of the top 5. So Chandler's still up there. So what's next for him? I've seen some tweeting it out there, but I think the Justin Gaethje fight, and I agree with him, I think the Justin Gaethje fight versus Michael Chandler is the one you have to make. That's the other fight you have to make. Justin Gaethje's out there retweeting saying, hey, I deserve a title shot next. He did technically lose to Khabib just like Poirier did. So he definitely has a case to be made that he should be facing maybe Charles Oliveira next for the title, and I still wouldn't hate that. If the UFC tomorrow said, you know what, Gaethje, he's going to fight Charles Oliveira next for the title, then, whoever wins Poirier-McGregor, they face the winner, Gaethje-Oliveira. I don't hate that as well, but I like Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler. Both guys have coming off of title fight losses here, would be a fantastic fight ratings-wise. You could put it on a fight night. You could put it on a pay-per-view. It's got fantastic implications to it. So I like Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler next. I think that's the next fight to make for Michael Chandler. I think that's the fight you make. I think it's a fun fight. Both guys have a wrestling background. There's not going to be too much grappling in that fight. It's going to be a lot of boxing combinations, a lot of strikes thrown once again, and both guys not backing down once again. So I think Justin Gaethje should face Michael Chandler next in the lightweight division. That's what I do. That's what I would do. And overall, again, just the UFC's lightweight division just continues to be the cream of the crop, one of the best weight divisions in all of combat sports. I mean, forget just MMA, boxing, everything. the UFC's lightweight division has just been so stacked for so many years and continues to be stacked for so many years, and it was definitely fun to watch. Now, I'll put 5 more minutes on the clock here, although maybe the other topics later on here I'll go a little shorter as I went way over there. But speaking of lightweight division, co-main event, we saw Beneil Dariush take on Tony Ferguson. Beneil Dariush gets the unanimous decision win over Tony Ferguson. Ferguson's slide continues, 3 losses in a row now. He lost to Justin Gaethje, then a loss to Charles Oliveira, now a loss to Beneil Dariush. And for Dariush, and we'll get to that side first, then move to the Tony Ferguson side of things, which is, I would say, equally big now, but Tony Ferguson is such a fan favorite, such a popular fighter that that's always going to be a popular angle to discuss. But for Beneil Dariush, so underrated, and he's starting to show that. I mean, the run of fights and the run of wins that he is on right now. We talked about Ferguson, losing 3 fights in a row. You go to the UFC, the lightweight champion right now, Charles Oliveira, the winning streak that he's on, impressive, definitely. But Beneil Dariush is up there too. I mean, he's won so many fights in a row. He continues to be so underrated. His Muay Thai, his combinations on his feet, his willingness to throw and sit in the pocket with guys when he wants to, impressive. And then he showed off that wrestling and that jiu-jitsu background, which he doesn't all the time show off, but he definitely showed it off in impressive fashion this past Saturday night against Tony Ferguson. And the crowd in Houston, Texas didn't like how he fought. They didn't like that he used his wrestling, went to the ground. But Beneil Dariush showed, again, why he's underrated. I mean, that wrestling, getting Tony Ferguson to the ground, gets Tony Ferguson in a submission attempt. Tony Ferguson does not tap. Beneil Dariush says, though, that he hears a pop in either the ankle or knee of Tony Ferguson. He has that lower leg submission he attempted. So it wasn't all just wrestling for Beneil Dariush. He definitely threw a lot of ground strikes. He definitely tried those submissions. You're just not going to submit Tony Ferguson. It's plain and simple. Anybody else would have tapped to what Beneil Dariush had him in. It's just Tony Ferguson does not tap. So Beneil Dariush has to walk away with just a decision win. But I was super impressed by him. He's super underrated. He's going to climb the lightweight rankings here, and he's getting close to a fight with a Justin Gaethje, with a Michael Chandler, with a Charles Oliveira, with a Conor McGregor, with a Dustin Poirier, any of those guys, Dan Hooker, name them. Any guy in the lightweight division, the top guys. I mean, he just fought, I know, Tony Ferguson, but he's going to get a massive fight next time out. Now, he said after the fight, he's looking to take a little bit of time off, fighting late 2021 here, early 2022, as he's going to be there for the birth of his daughter. Who could blame him? Congratulations to him for that, too. That's a nice way to go into being a dad there, is getting a big win like that and knowing when he comes out of whenever he wants to fight again, it's going to be a massive fight. So that's the only reason why, too. And I was going to throw him into the discussion of Michael Chandler, who does he face next? Because Beneil Dariush would make sense to face Michael Chandler. I actually think Beneil Dariush makes a lot of sense to face a lot of these guys. I don't think for the title next. I'm not going that far yet. But I think Dariush would make sense to face a lot of these guys. But just knowing that he said he's going to take some time off, you got to put him out of the discussion a little bit for now. But he does come back. We'll see how this division's stacked up. It could be very different at the end of the year, early next year, but he's going to get a big fight. I feel happy for Beneil Dariush. I feel bad for him that the crowd again in Houston was booing him. Everybody around me was booing him. My wife and I, we were trying to get some applause going for him, just because even if you love Tony Ferguson, and I like Tony Ferguson, you can be the biggest Tony Ferguson fan in the world, you got to applaud what Beneil Dariush is doing, and especially in that fight where he dominated Tony Ferguson. I know people were unhappy with how he wrestled, and there's some people there at the Toyota Center who maybe aren't, maybe they're casual MMA fans. I think even Lando Venata, who was on the prelims, was taking some shots at some of the casual fans Saturday night. But you can't do that. I mean, just Beneil Dariush, he dominated the fight, and he used his pure wrestling. He dominated the fight. He did what he was supposed to do. He wasn't just laying on top of a guy. He was throwing some ground strikes. The third round, maybe he had some moments where he was stalling a little bit. But, you're facing Tony Ferguson. He's getting a little tired. I can't blame him. I don't understand booing Beneil Dariush. He shouldn't care, honestly. People need to stop booing him. I mean, cheer the guy. I mean, he's underrated. He's going to be facing... honestly, moving forward, he's going to have some bigger fights than Tony Ferguson is, that's for sure. So I feel bad for Beneil Dariush, but he got the win, so that's all that matters for Beneil Dariush. Now, the Tony Ferguson side of things, as I wrap up topic number 3 here, technically topic number 4 with how long I'm going, but topic number 3 here, wrapping it up, Tony Ferguson, it's just the same old Tony. I mean, just no adjustments, coming into a fight, coaching seemed off, looked hesitant. I mean, he just did not have anything that you would really take away from that performance and say, yeah, you know what, I actually feel good about Tony Ferguson moving forward. No, his last two performances were terrible. This one may be even worse. I know Beneil Dariush really snuffed them out, didn't allow him to get anything going, but there were moments in that first round, there were moments in that second round where, especially the first round, for Beneil Dariush, they were on their feet, they were throwing combinations. Beneil Dariush was right in his face, pushing him back, moving his head, throwing his combinations. And Tony didn't have any answer for it. And how he didn't, I have no idea. And again, that's why all of last week, that's all I talked about. It's all about the mentality for Tony Ferguson. He's got to change it. He's going to have to change some of his coaching. He's going to have to change some of his game plan if he wants to be successful. He didn't do any of that. How you come out in that fight and just let Beneil Dariush walk you back like that, take you down, and not have any answers for it, I don't know. Maybe it's, and actually, as I was walking out of the Toyota Center on Saturday night, one fan was yelling at another fan. He just, he yelled, I'm guessing the guy had a Ferguson shirt on, and he just yelled, "Tony's washed!" Maybe it's that. Maybe Tony is washed at this point. I mean, there's nothing else I can really think of right now that would really give you answers on why Tony Ferguson is the way he is now. He looks, as I said, gun shy. He looks not the same. I mean, when Beneil Dariush is walking him down like that, where's the Tony that would step in with an elbow and crack him? Where's even the Ferguson where the Gaethje fight at one point? Remember, he hit Gaethje with an uppercut, knocked him down, hurt him. Maybe it would have been a different story had there been more time left in that round, but it was at the end of the round. Gaethje was able to recover in his corner. Where was that Tony Ferguson at in this fight? He didn't have any answers from Beneil Dariush walking him down, and then the takedowns, he had no answer either. And he keeps going for these submission attempts that have no chance at submitting anybody. I mean, the third round, he tried to lock up, I believe, a Daryus or an anaconda choke with Dariush going in for that takedown. That had no shot. The submission had no shot. He was in the wrong angle. And then he held on to it for too long. And I know you're trying to get back to your feet. You're trying to hold on for dear life. Anything at that point, you're losing the fight. But just not smart. I mean, it's not smart by any stretch of the imagination for Tony Ferguson. And I don't know where he goes now. I mean, as I said, Dariush is going to get a big fight. Where does Ferguson go now? In my opinion, he's close to... I say close to being cut because he's lost 3 fights in a row. If he keeps on this trajectory, I mean, how can the UFC justify keeping him in the top 5, keeping him in the top 10, keeping him in the UFC lightweight division? Now, the only thing that's really going to save him is, again, the booing of Beneil Dariush. You saw how much people love Tony Ferguson. And I like Tony Ferguson, and I'll tune into any Tony Ferguson fight just because maybe he does, find that flashback. Maybe he does find that extra gear that he's been missing his last 3 fights again. So I'll keep watching him, so will others, and that's what's going to keep him in the UFC compared to others. But most people, I mean, if he was any other fighter, you'd be looking to cut him. I mean, look at Donald Cowboy Cerrone. All the times he's being knocked out now, all the trouble he's having late in his career. The UFC now is just like, hey, we're going to give you one more fight. They don't want him around anymore. I mean, for his health, for a lot of reasons. I mean, even though he's entertaining still and people still tune in to watch Cowboy, at some point it's not entertaining anymore, even if you are Tony Ferguson. So where he goes from here, they're going to give him another decent matchup. My guess is against somebody that he can, maybe a Dan Hooker, I don't know, someone that's more beatable, quote-unquote beatable for Tony Ferguson. But it's not looking good for Tony. It's not looking good, and I don't feel optimistic by any means for Tony Ferguson in his future here. We'll see what happens next for El Kukui in the UFC lightweight division. All right, running through the rest of the card real quick. And I'll make this one a little quicker since I ran so long on that one on my topic number 5. But rest of the card. Caitlin Chikagian, she got a win over Vivian Araujo. Chikagian with another win. Chikagian's just like that. And I was talking to my wife about this at the event. Chikagian, and this isn't saying Chikagian's a cockroach, but she's just like a cockroach. Just like it won't go away, right? Like Chikagian's just, she's just that woman in the division that she's never going to beat Valentina. And she's never going to be like super, super exciting. But she like does enough to hang around, right? She does enough to beat Araujo here, who a lot of people, including myself, thought Araujo won some of those rounds. Close fight. Chikagian just keeps squeaking out these fights. She's just that, she's just that cockroach in the division that stays around, just won't go away. And maybe we'll get a title shot eventually again against Valentina Shevchenko, even though that is a matchup I have absolutely zero interest in. Again, will I watch it? Yes, because I have a podcast here and I love mixed martial arts and combat sports, but I don't have any interest in seeing that again. But Chookagian, she gets the win. Good for her. I mean, again, anytime you get a win, she's still getting paid. She's doing what she loves. I'm not going to hate on her too much after I just hated on her a lot. But I'm not hating on her. I like Katlyn Chookagian. But I'm just saying, I don't see too many exciting things in the future for Katlyn Chookagian unless she pulls something different out against Valentina Shevchenko the second time around. But she still got the win again. Good for her. She still beats an up-and-coming fighter in Araujo who looked pretty good actually Saturday night. Later on in the fight, into the second round, into the third round, she started to slow down. I think that's actually where she lost the fight. She's going to have to improve upon that. But Araujo, she is a up-and-coming fighter. She could be a very fun fighter in that division if she keeps improving. So that was an all right fight, actually, in the women's flyweight division. But so Chookagian, she gets the win there on the main card. Matt Schnell and Rogério Bontorin, probably the worst fight of the main card. They were getting booed a lot by the Toyota Center crowd. I won't say I hate booing fighters because they're putting their bodies on the line, so I'm not going to say they deserved it, but this fight definitely deserved to be on the prelims. It was where it was originally scheduled. The UFC, of course, because the Edmund Shabazian, Jack Hermanson postponement and the Nate Diaz-Leon Edwards postponement early on the week before that, they had to put the fight on that card. I think they still should have put, even though Jacare broke his arm in the feature prelim, I still thought they should have put Souza and Muniz on that main card. I still think that would have been the fight to move up, but I get why they kept it as a feature prelim. But Schnell Bontorin, that fight was not a main card fight. They should have been on the prelims. They're not ready for it yet. But Bontorin, he gets the win. He's the underdog in that fight. He came overweight. He was overweight in that fight. That's an issue that he's going to have to deal with, especially because he came up a weight class. Got to be a little more professional than that. And maybe if you don't have as bad of a weight cut, maybe he even finds a way to finish Matt Schnell. Where in the third round, when he let his hands fly, Bontorin, he actually did, hurt Schnell and bang him up a little bit. So, maybe Bontorin better weight cut. Maybe it's different the second time around against Matt Schnell. Maybe he's able to put him away. But that was an okay fight. Should have been on the prelims. Good for Bontorin. You got to figure out the weight thing. For Schnell, he is what he is, kind of. I don't see him getting necessarily too much better, but I don't necessarily see him being much worse, if that makes sense. He's going to be competitive in a lot of fights. He's all right on his feet against bigger punchers than even Bontorin is, which Bontorin does have some power, but bigger punchers, I think they knock Schnell out. But he's all right on his feet. He's got some okay grappling, some decent grappling when it goes down. He'll be competitive in every fight, but Schnell is what Schnell is, basically, as they went at it on UFC 262. Next up, we'll talk about this rest of this UFC 262 main card. Fight of the night. Edson Barboza and Shane Burgos. I thought this fight would actually be even more insane than it was. It was actually pretty crazy, but I thought it would be even more insane than it was, and I had predicted it was going to be fight of the night. It still ended up being fight of the night, as it still really was a good fight. And Edson Barboza really, I don't want to say carried this one, because Burgos, I love Shane Burgos. I love his boxing when he's on. He had his moments, but Edson Barboza looked fantastic against Shane Burgos. Throwing some of those spinning, combinations, some of those spinning heel kicks, those types of things, spinning heel kicks to the body, throwing those spinning kicks, throwing great boxing combinations, throwing his kicks to the legs, especially early. I believe he may even hurt his foot. It looked like mid-fight he may have broke his foot or at least done something to it in a lot of those low calf kicks he was hitting Shane Burgos with. So chopped him down early, threw those spinning combinations, threw his boxing combinations, and really beat up Shane Burgos. He ends up knocking him out in that third round. Scary knockout, by the way. And again, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. But a lot of you, of course, have already. A delayed reaction from Burgos on that right hand that clocked him, where he then stumbles back about a half second or so later. And that really scared me in the arena, that when you see that, that's never good. And I know Dana White, there's pictures of him, octagon signs, standing up as well. And reacting to that as well, to that knockout, being worried about Shane Burgos. And they said they sent him to the hospital afterwards. That's good that they did that. It's always scary. Haven't seen anything else, so Shane Burgos obviously okay, which is good to hear. And some other doctors explained what happened with that fight, but still a scary knockout there for Shane Burgos. But for Edson Barboza, fantastic win. And he is becoming a true player at featherweight. I mean, 3 fights in a row now, 3 wins in a row. Should have maybe won the one before that. I think he should have. So he should be have won 4 fights in a row now. I've been skeptical of the weight cuts moving down from lightweight to featherweight, including this past week where I thought he looked a little shaky on the scales. But afterwards, Barboza, he said he was fine. He said he's never felt better. So I guess we trust the fighter here. And obviously not me just sitting at home here in my apartment talking about it, that Barboza said he feels good. So, for right now, all intents and purposes, Edson Barboza is a true player in that featherweight division. He looks really good. He's a big featherweight. He looks fast. And his boxing combinations, I think that was the thing that impressed me the most about this fight with Shane Burgos. I knew this would be a burner. I knew it would be a barn burner. I knew it would be a banger. But I thought Burgos would have the better of the two boxing between the two. I thought he would look better with his hands at moments, but it was Edson Barboza that looked better, though. His hand speed was so good. He looked, just torching him with his hand speed, really cracking him, putting all his combinations together, not just one shot. He's putting 1, 2, 3, 4 shots together at a time. Barboza looked fantastic, and he ends up getting that knockout win over Shane Burgos and is a true player in this featherweight division now. And someone that he's actually Barboza. Oliveira, obviously, he gets, if we're just going to rate real quick, star number 1 as most, impactful win, best win, the win that you would say, you know what, that was the highlight of UFC 262. Obviously, it's Charles Oliveira. After that, though, I might go Edson Barboza, even maybe a little bit ahead of Dariush. I think Dariush is number 3, but I would put Barboza just ahead of him, number 2 there, as that hand speed from Barboza and the combinations and how he's looking. And we've seen in the past how hard he is to take down. Barboza is going to be a tough out for anybody, and he's going to start climbing that ladder in the UFC featherweight division. So that was really impressive from Edson Barboza. For the Burgos angle of it real quick, I don't know where he goes from here. He didn't look great in the Josh Emmett fight. He didn't look great here. He looked, he looked hesitant at times. He didn't put his feints together. He didn't put all of his combinations together like he needed to. His head movement's always been lacking a little bit. The volume that I thought was going to be there wasn't there. I don't know what's going on with him. We'll see. But for right now, I would say let's wait and see what happens to Shane Burgos. I'm not willing to give up on him necessarily yet, but not great looking for Shane Burgos right now coming off of UFC 262. So that was the main card. The rest of it, summing it up, just real quick, again, running through the rest of the card. I gave some thoughts on Twitter, again, at Jeff_Brantley. Same thing on Instagram, guys, at Jeff_Brantley. But if you want any more reaction to any of these fights, shoot me a tweet, shoot me a thought, and I'll let you know. But just, running through the rest of the fights real quick, summing them up. Lando Venata's win over Mike Grundy. I thought that was a fantastic win. That was a grueling fight. Was it a fun one to watch? You talk about Dariush wrestling. I thought that was actually pretty fun to watch. The Grundy-Venata fight wasn't the most fun fight to watch. And I said Venata even put out on Instagram, you can boo me for running or whatever. I think he said something like that, kind of alluding to the crowd or, people saying the fight wasn't that fun. But he did what he had to do. Grundy was just trying to grind him out. He's grinding wrestling. That's all he was trying to do. But Venata looked really good in his new weight class, stuffed a lot of those takedowns, stayed on his feet, hurt Grundy when he could with some of those combinations. So that was a good win for Lando Venata, for Groovy. And then also Christos Gallegos. He opened the card with a Darce choke finish. And that was a good fight win too over Soriano. But I would also give some love to Gallegos there. That was a good Darce choke he locked in. He was trying to go to his wrestling a little bit in that fight. He was also landing some combinations. Both guys were in front of each other going at it, but he took him down, and then he caught Soriano trying to get up too quick, and he caught him in that Darce choke. That was a sick finish from Christos Gallegos. So shout out to Gallegos. That was a fantastic win. Edson Barboza, though, he takes the cream of the crop, I think, for the night as far as, well, not the cream of the crop. I think he's got the second most impactful win. Actually, I'll just go through them real quick here. I would say Charles Oliveira had the best win of the night at UFC 262. Barboza second. Dariush third. I would then say maybe Gallegos. I'll say he's fifth. I'll give Lando Groovy Venata fourth. And I'm sure I'm running short here on time, so I'm running through real quick. I'm sure I'm missing somebody. Shoot me a tweet if you're mad at me. At Jeff_Brantley or on Instagram. At Jeff_Brantley. But that's my thoughts on UFC 262. And then, again, I've went over so long. I'm not going to go 5 minutes real quick. Just some quick thoughts on the crowd. This was supposed to be topic number 5 for me, but topic number 5 in my 5-minute topics, the crowd and the experience of UFC 262. Because again, as I said at the beginning, I hadn't been to a fight. I hadn't been to a sporting event since last February. It had been forever since I had been to a live event with a crowd, with a full crowd, by the way, too. It wasn't, 5,000 people. It was full. They ended up announcing around over 16,000 people. One of their bigger gates, the largest gate they've ever had in Houston, Texas, over $4 million. So it was great from the UFC's perspective, business-wise. But it was also fun as a fan. I mean, they did a good job, the UFC did, of bringing fans back in, still giving you that mixed martial arts experience, not changing anything. The UFC experience that I've come to love of going to live fights. This was my 8th live fight I've ever been to in my life. I've had as much fun as all of them as I've ever had. Had a lot of fun at this one, maybe even more so. Went with my wife this time, first time since being married at a live fight. So it was a lot of fun, and the experience was great. Most people were awesome. Again, and this is probably where I would say the only downside of Saturday night was there were some really drunk people there at the Toyota Center for UFC 262. And maybe this is just because I'm getting older. And listen, I've talked about it on the podcast before. I'm getting a little bit of the get off my lawn old guy. Maybe I'm just starting to see this more. Maybe I'm just starting to notice this more. But there were a lot of drunk people there. And a lot of people who could not handle their alcohol. A lot of people were acting like they were in college again or that they were 21 again. You're talking about 40-year-old men just yelling whatever they want to, at fights. Just, hey, punch them in the, you can use your imagination. Just punch them there. Just grown men just yelling whatever they want to. Which is always, there's always that guy. But I felt like there was more guys, though, this time at UFC 262 in the Toyota Center. Maybe it's because we're all coming out of the pandemic here, where everybody was inside. We weren't at sporting events. I think some people were letting loose a little bit, hadn't let loose in a while. Maybe hadn't, and maybe they've been to a baseball game. It's still not the same, though. So you saw some of that. That was one of the only parts of the night that was, especially when you started seeing some of the fights break out where, again, if you're going to be a knucklehead like that, I guess if you want to go spend, so much money on a ticket and then get thrown out and go to jail, I guess that's your decision. But, some of that stuff starts to bother you a little bit, obviously. But otherwise, outside of that, though, it was a lot of fun, though. You know what I mean? And most people, again, around us were having fun, cheering on their fighters that they were cheering for. A lot of people were in Charles Oliveira's corner. A lot of people were in Michael Chandler's corner. Everybody was in Tony Ferguson's corner. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun Saturday night at UFC 262. An awesome experience. Awesome to get back to full crowds. And hopefully, we're starting to see actually other states do this too now, lift all the restrictions. And I think that's why the UFC, MMA, all these other sports, we're going to start to see them even, UFC is not going to just be in what Dana White said now, Florida, Texas, Arizona. He's going to have a card in Vegas. I think you're going to start to see them move elsewhere here depending on capacity. And hopefully when they come to a town near you, hopefully you can have the experience of going to see a live fight, which is always fun. And if you haven't been to a live fight ever, you got to put it on your bucket list at least once in your life. It's very, very fun to go see a live fight. Although I'm happy to be back, though, home, and I'll get to my 3 parting shots here, including one turning the page to this weekend's fight weekend with Bellator 259, LFA, Invicta, UFC Vegas 27, and some boxing. But I am glad to be home, though. I'm going to be glad to be home watching these fights this weekend as there's no bathroom lines. It's going to be nice to be home, not to have to deal with that. If I want a beer, I can just go to the fridge, that type of thing. So I am glad to be home this weekend. It's fun for a weekend. Then I want to get back home and watch it on my couch where I don't have to wait in line or hear some guy behind me talk about just punching somebody in a random spot. I am glad to be back home this weekend to watch this weekend's great fight slate once again. All right, let's go with 3 parting shots. I went way over. I broke my rules today. I promise moving forward I'm going to get back to it. Just 262 was so amazing. There was so much to break down, and I'll have some more thoughts coming out on Twitter as I've had all week, and then move into this weekend's fight weekend on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley, so make sure you go follow me there. But parting shot number 1, and again, UFC 262 related, the $75,000 bonus that the UFC changed for this event, and again, it was a Tony Ferguson thing, and this is why he's not going to get cut, at least right now. He has so much pull. He has so much fan power. He's at the press conference the other day. He shouts out, getting paid $75,000. What does the UFC do? They give $75,000 bonuses out at this UFC 262 card, and the UFC should do this moving forward. And I know it's not my money. I know it's Dana White's money. I know it's the UFC's money. They don't want to just be throwing money to everybody. But hear me out. I do think the $75,000 bonuses should be, I think they should keep them. Just for pay-per-views, though. I would make it an incentive that if you make it to the pay-per-view, if you make it onto a pay-per-view main card, you could get a $75,000 bonus. Now, again, maybe you'd have some fighters then just saying, I'm going to hold out. I don't want to be on a fight night. I want to be on a pay-per-view. But I think that should be the incentive there, too, that, if you're an up-and-coming fighter and you're on a fight night, or I guess this is where it'd be a little unfair, is where if you have a veteran on a fight night, you can't get that $75,000 bonus. Maybe you do it from all of them. I don't know the UFC's. I don't know where they are business model wise. Maybe they would be okay if they're okay financially just giving out $75,000 bonuses every single card. Then go do it. I would love that. That's my main point here, is that I think they should stay, because you really saw guys going after it Saturday night. You saw guys going after that $75,000, whether they be the first fight of the night or the last fight of the night. So I think $75,000, and that's a lot of money, obviously, for anybody, especially fighters who are, they're not, unless you have some sponsors here and there, or you have a side job, you're not making money, in between fights most of the time. So the $75,000 makes it's a big difference to a lot of fighters. So I think they should keep it in place, the $75,000 for every card if they can. If not, just use it for pay-per-views or use it for cards here and there, use it for stacked cards here and there. Maybe that's what you do, but I like it. I think you're going to if you keep putting it in place, you're going to have guys keep going after it. So I love the $75,000 bonus the UFC had for UFC 262. Topic number 2 here, parting shot number 2, moving away from 262 finally here, and we'll start to turn the page. I was going to go with something else. I was looking around. This is where sometimes I'll look around for a fight that's been made in mixed martial arts or boxing, any of that type of stuff, and really look for something that, I hadn't talked about or I hadn't had a chance to talk about in my 5-minute topics. And this one caught my eye, though, okay? And this was from MMAfighting.com. I saw an article on this, that Jake Paul just came out. Of course, Jake Paul the YouTube sensation, now turned boxer, who's just been making everybody money, Ben Askren money, himself money, taunting Dana White, taunting mixed martial artists, saying, hey, you want to really get paid, come box with me, come to boxing. This is where the money's to be made. MMA, UFC, Dana White, they're ripping you off, come to boxing. Well, Jake Paul now is coming out and he's saying he's a free agent and that he would be willing to get together with Dana White and have a crossover boxing promotion. He'd be willing to do that. So it's so funny to see that now because, Paul, you go back to, what was it, UFC 261. He was down in Jacksonville, Florida. He's on camera. Everyone was asking a lot of questions of Dana White, who's also ripped Paul a lot. You ripped the YouTube boxers. Why'd you have him on camera then? That type of thing. But it's all starting to make sense now. I don't want to say they're in cahoots together, but wouldn't a Jake Paul, Dana White crossover boxing promotion just be perfect? I mean, doesn't that just seem great to you that you would have Jake Paul, who really has done a great job promoting and having these fun events that are making, I don't want to say making boxing fun again, because I do love boxing, but for some other fans out there who maybe went away from boxing, or just mixed martial arts fans who maybe don't watch boxing, he's bringing those fans to the sport, which is great for boxing. He's been able to do that. If you get him together with Dana White and the talent that he's been over the years and what he's done with the company of the UFC, wouldn't that be awesome to have that crossover? And when he says crossover, I'm guessing he means, hey, you're going to bring one of your guys, one of a mixed martial artists, into the boxing ring. I'd love that. I'd love to see Tyron Woodley in there. I'd love to see Tony Ferguson. I'd love to see those guys in there, though. I'd love to see Dana White up there with Paul working together to put events like that on. Dana White did, once upon a time want the Zuffa boxing promotion. It kind of fell through, obviously. Not kind of. It did fall through. Wasn't able to get it done. But maybe this is Dana White's chance, though, to get into the boxing game, help Paul out a little bit. Again, maybe he doesn't do it. Maybe the pride, the pridefulness of Dana White doesn't want to admit that Jake Paul has something going on. But I think it'd be a good match, actually. I think it'd be all right. I think it would be good for the fans, at least, if they got together. So that's my parting shot number 2. I do think they should. I think that'd be a fun one. Jake Paul and Dana White working together on that one. All right, parting shot number 3. We're going to turn the page now. UFC 262 in the books. Again, if you want some more thoughts, tweet at me at Jeff_Brantley. Same thing on Instagram, guys. Also had some episodes last week that I talked about some of these fights going into them. So go check out the other content from last week. Go check out my other videos from the other night. Again, on Twitter, at Jeff_Brantley. If you want some more extra bonus 262 content, if you want to go back, relive some things too, go back and check all of that out. But we flip the page here, and coming up this next week, we have some good fights. Again, Bellator 259 coming up Friday night. You have Cyborg back in action, taking on Leslie Smith. That going to be a fun fight. As far as, I shouldn't say it's going to be a fun fight. Maybe I'm spoiling my prediction later in this week, but it's Chris Cyborg. That's all you need to say, right? She's not facing Amanda Nunes. She's not facing Kayla Harrison. She's not facing Clarissa Shields. Clarissa Shields figures out the mixed martial arts thing as she's going to make her MMA debut later this summer. So it's Cyborg, though, right? So anytime Cyborg fights, it's fun. It's another Bellator card. They've been on fire with a lot of these cards. Some fun fights coming up on that Bellator 259. So we'll preview that later this week. Also, LFA coming up later this week, and an Invicta card, both on Friday night, too. So 3 fight cards coming up Friday night. Those should be fun. And then Saturday night, Going to be a fun night as well as we have UFC Vegas 27. Cody Garbrandt back in action in the main event of that one against Rob Font. Back at the Apex Center, though, so no crowd. So Cody Garbrandt won't be able to go crazy for the 16,000 fans that he would have this past weekend, or the $75,000 bonus that I don't think the UFC will be offering this weekend. But it'll still be fun. Cody Garbrandt, Rob Font should be a fantastic main event there. And then a big one in the boxing world. Again, the super lightweight titles on the line. IBF, WBC, WO, all that good stuff. Jose Ramirez taking on Josh Taylor. Both guys undefeated. Going to be a good main event of boxing. I'm going to have some coverage of that one later this week as well. Very excited for that fight, actually. And there's also some other ones on that card. As well as Robeisy Ramirez, he's back in action. Hank Lundy, he's also on that card in the co-main event, I believe. So a fun boxing card, some fun mixed martial arts cards coming up this weekend. You want to be right here on the Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports podcast for all of it. I'll be tweeting about it all week at Jeff_Brantley. Thoughts throughout the week too, leading up to the fight. You know, some early predictions, some of what I'm seeing. So you want to make sure you go follow me there, and again on Instagram as well at Jeff_Brantley. And then come back later this week, episode 88 of the podcast. We'll break it all down. We'll preview it. I might even do an episode 89 again here. I did a pop-up, or at least a pop-up episode. I'm going to start making these things a thing every single week. So episode 88 will be coming up later this week with a full preview of all those cards. Plus, I'll do a pop-up episode at some point on Instagram Live or on YouTube. So go check out the YouTube channel as well. In the Instagram, again, at Jeff_Brantley, but on YouTube, the Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports podcast. That way, and go subscribe to it again. That way you get the latest notifications whenever a new video drops. And if I go live on there, if I go live on that platform, I usually tweet it out, but in case you didn't get a chance to see my tweet or my post, then you get the notification to your phone as well from YouTube. So go check it out, the Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports podcast. A lot coming up later this week. I'm pumped even more so for this week. I was pumped last week for 262. I get pumped every week. Let's just be honest. I'm excited every week for every single combat sports event, especially this weekend coming up as we have a lot of cool cards coming up. So you want to be here again on the Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports podcast. Go to the YouTube channel one more time, Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports podcast. Go to the website, maninthecagemmma.show. The audio versions of everything on Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get them, guys. Follow me on Twitter at Jeff_Brantley. Same thing on Instagram, guys, at Jeff_Brantley. And then I'll talk to everybody later this week on episode 88 of the Man in the Cage, MMA and Combat Sports podcast. Take care, everybody.